Hi, we're here with Harry Campbell, a scientist with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And Harry, the Chesapeake Bay cleanup and cleaning up Pennsylvania's waters to meet federal water quality standards has been in the news a lot. And I was wondering if you'd start off first by giving us a little background about impaired waters in Pennsylvania and the Bay problem that we have.
Well, we have over 15,000 miles of impaired water bodies, rivers and streams, in the state of Pennsylvania. And what that means is that essentially they do not meet basic water quality standards. In some instances, there is very little or no life in some of these streams. Nutrients, nutrient pollution, nitrogen and phosphorus, as well as sediment pollution, are one of the leading causes of this impairment to Pennsylvania waters. Unfortunately, the Chesapeake Bay is also on that list, in large part due to the fact that the Susquehanna River that feeds into the Chesapeake Bay is inundated with these nutrients, particularly nitrogen and phosphorus, as well as sediments, that ultimately degrade the bay's overall quality and render it unable to sustain life.
Now, there's not just one source of this problem, am I right? There are a number of different sources. Can you give us a little bit of background on that?
Sure. There are general classification as point sources and non-point sources. Point sources are those that come from wastewater treatment plants as well as industrial facilities. These are discharges from sewage treatment plants and other things. They are also non-point sources, which come from runoff from, say, for instance, an agricultural field or a parking lot or rooftops in our newer subdivisions, as well as in our commercial districts as well.
I think one of the things that's gotten in the news lately is that people are starting now to make plans for how to upgrade their sewage treatment plants. And Pennsylvania itself has made commitments to do things that will clean up our waters. Could you outline that?
Sure. Well, back in 2005, we started to make commitments to actually improve the overall health of our water quality in the state of Pennsylvania and the Chesapeake Bay back in the middle of the 1980s. But the latest iteration was known as the Chesapeake Bay 2000 Agreement, and that was an agreement amongst all the major Bay states to actually have specific reductions in the amount of pollution, nitrogen and phosphorus as well as sediment pollution, that is entering the Chesapeake Bay from Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, all the major Bay states. This was a response due to a lawsuit against EPA, which found that the Environmental Protection Agency had to develop what is known as a total maximum daily load to assure that the bay would be restored by at least 2010. The tributary strategies, which what we call the tributary strategies, were released in 2005 in Pennsylvania. That compliance plan included how we are going to actually achieve the necessary reductions in the amount of pollution we send to the Chesapeake Bay through non-point source and point source actions. One of those actions was including, for the first time ever, actual load limits in the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus wastewater treatment plants could discharge into Pennsylvania waters.
I think the other element too is that agriculture contributes to the problem, as you mentioned, as a non-point source, as you said. Mm-hmm. They've also been subject to different requirements. They've made significant investments through growing greener, and last year the REAP tax credit helped them clean up farms. Can you tell me a little bit about the agricultural side?
Sure. Agriculture is the majority of the amount of pollution that is assigned to that particular source that's coming from Pennsylvania waters and into the Chesapeake Bay. And they are a leading source of impairment in our Pennsylvania rivers and streams as well. So there's a lot of work to be done on the agricultural side of the equation. But the simple fact of the matter is that if we had just addressed the agricultural sector, which provides around 50% of the nitrogen and a little over 50% of the phosphorus that's entering into the Chesapeake Bay from Pennsylvania, we would simply not get to where we need to be in terms of the federal mandate to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. We have to address all sources within the watershed, including point sources and non-point sources like agriculture and urban stormwater runoff, to get to where we need to be in terms of the overall reductions. Pennsylvania agriculture over the last 20 years has been the focus of all of our tributary strategies up until the most recent one. We have tried to make our reductions through that sector almost holistically.